Well, hello everyone. That provocative question got me thinking, what do we do when we don't know what to do? And I'm going to tell you a story. It was 1999, and I got a call from Sharad Sapra, and he was director of UNICEF's Operation Lifeline Sudan. And he said to me, the North and South Sudan are in the midst of a 17-year civil war, and a whole generation of children are suffering. There was no medical care, no schools, families were being torn apart. Some of the children were being taken into the army as soldiers. He said that he couldn't do anything about peace in the region, but he could do something for the children. He knew about Future Search, and he said to me, I want to run 2 Future Searches. I want to have one for the children, and then one for the adults, where the children will bring their vision into the adult conference. This was brand new to me. I thought it was brilliant. He said he could bring all of the stakeholders from inside and outside of Sudan to a conference center in Nairobi, Kenya. And there they'd have to face the fact that their children had no future unless they were willing to do something about it. And he offered me that challenge, and I accepted. Now, this is the truth. I had no idea where Sudan was. I mean, I knew it was in Africa, but I couldn't have pinpointed it on the map. Now I can. That's Sudan. I met the children briefly when they arrived in this conference center, and they had been transported from their villages all over the country by bus, by plane, by truck. And I was watching them as they were trying to figure out beds with fluffy pillows, bathtubs with running water, televisions, telephones. It was really extraordinary. Of course, what's this thing called Future Search that they were invited to? But after they had some rest, and they had food, and a good night's sleep, and fresh clothes, we started this Future Search. And there I was, sitting in a circle with 40 children, ages 12 to 18, from diverse tribes. And the truth is, I had no idea how to begin. I was stupefied. There's a sentence that I always use when I start a Future Search, and it goes like this. Let me tell you how this meeting is different from other meetings you've attended. And I knew I could not use that. And I'm looking at the children, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking into those eyes. And up from inside of me comes this sentence. I said, you are the future of your country, and your voice is important. And we were looking at each other, and then it hit me. There were 6 languages around that circle, and I didn't even know if the children who spoke English understood what I said. So I said, please raise your hand if you understand what I'm saying. And 3 hands went up. So I said it again, you are the future of your country, and your voice is important. And then I said to the translators, tell the children you're with what I'm saying, and those who spoke English, tell the others in your own words. And I repeated the sentence again, adding, please raise your hand when you understand what I've said. And they weren't looking at me anymore, they were talking to each other. And seriously, it was about a half hour that I was repeating and asking to raise their hand. And I was watching these kids come alive as they were making meaning of that one sentence. And by the end of that period of time, and all hands were raised, what's the obvious? I mean, it was profound and have obviously changed who I am, which is you never really know if you're understood, even if you're using the same language, right? Flash of the obvious. But the other thing that happened was that we, the children and I, made a commitment that we were not going to take any step, we weren't going to do anything until we were sure that everybody understood what we were saying. That was our rule, our guideline for the meeting. Then the other learning was the kids get it. And for the next 2.5 days, they shared their stories. They told about their experiences. They had a dream for the future. They made plans about how to take this experience back to their villages. And they decided who of the 40 children would go to the adult conference, which was complex, but a task that they took on and did, and it was brilliant. And then, after a day of rest, the adult conference started. And there we were. Sharad Sapra was welcoming the 80 participants and the children. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, the tears are rolling down my face. So I got up, and I went outside, and I looked up, and I said, "This has got to work." But then I reclaimed, got control of myself, got back into my role. I went inside, and again, I had a moment of what do I do? Because typically, I will say, we don't know what the outcomes will be, but by the third day, you'll discover your common ground agenda. But here, there were people from warring tribes in the room, and I found myself saying, by the third day, we'll discover if there is a common ground agenda. And being able to say that was, first of all, real, and second of all, while the children were in my heart, I had to give up a control that I didn't have. Now, that meeting had been planned really well, and we had the right conditions to do something constructive. But change happens one step at a time, right? And the participants had to decide what they were going to do each step of the way. And I had to give up any control I had of making, or any control I wished I had, of making things happen. There's a kind of, not irony, but on reflection, 10 years later, Marv Weisbrod and I wrote a book on facilitation, and one of the chapters is control what you can and let go what you can't. So that's part of who I am, or what I tried to be. Well, the meetings had the outcomes that I'd hoped for, but it wasn't easy, because there was a moment when the tribal chiefs started arguing with each other over land use issues and oil rights issues. And again, it was, how do I bring reality to this? How do I offer a choice of what could possibly happen in that meeting? And I did that, and I said, you can keep working on these issues that can't be resolved here, or you can focus on the children, and we have the people in the room that could do something about it. There were a couple things that were important. Number one, the children were there, and they had been listening to them. And the second is the diversity of the stakeholders. And this was who was in the room, people from inside and outside, expatriate Sudanese. And we had teachers and the expatriate businessmen, healthcare workers, chiefs, women from the villages, social service agency people, funders, and the children. That was the diversity and the capacity of who was in the room. And with the choice, they decided to step out of the fight and focus on the children. And the outcomes were pretty amazing, because they made very concrete plans about building schools. The kids have been learning under trees, about building schools, about bringing in instructional materials and books, supporting the teachers, building a clinic, a school for girls. And a year later, we ran another future search inside Sudan on demobilizing child soldiers, and the army chiefs and the tribal chiefs were in the room, among others. And a year later, and the following year, 13,000 children were able to put down their guns and were sent back to their villages. So, This is a story, but I always ask myself, what does this have to do with the crazy world that we're living in right now? And we all know that around the planet, people are putting so much energy into warring over differences. And just imagine if we could discover what we want to do together. The moment that those tribal chiefs stopped shouting at each other was heart-stopping. But some of you know this. There's no shortage of heart-stopping moments in Future Search. People often find themselves at a fork in the road, and one path is to do that habitual, what we're used to doing, which is replay that old script. But the other path is the walking into the uncertainty, walking into the unknown, not knowing, but taking the risk, having the courage to see if there's a way to discover possibilities that are new. And with deep respect for the courage it takes, I offer the choice. And I want to say something about the word courage. I mean, we use these words a lot. Courage is big. It's not a small thing. It really means letting go of control. Control we fantasize that we have, but letting go of having the answers. You know, for in yourself and in leaders, leaders with courage are okay with being vulnerable, are okay with making mistakes, because if you don't make a mistake, you never discover anything new. And I always know for the work that we're doing that we need leaders who can let go of control and help people be together, create conditions for people to struggle together, to learn together, to be vulnerable together, to be wrong together, to be creative together, and to make plans together. I have one more story of a courageous leader, and this man also was a UNICEF regional director, and he was in Indonesia, and he wanted to do something for the children's school system. He wanted to rethink how the school system would enable all of the children of that country to have a good, meaningful education. And he started that whole initiative by bringing a big, diverse group of people together, including the children and the ministers and everyone in between. But besides that point, he began the meeting with these sentences, and I've repeated them many times, and I want to here. Rolf said, considering how much time and resources we spend in meetings, it should actually shock us that we don't get more important work done. Meetings are where we confront and resolve the problems and issues that society faces. If we can't transform our ability to act in meetings, how can we expect transformation in society? Always been meaningful to me, and I will tell you that that is my mission in my professional life, which is to make meetings matter, to enable people to come together who aspire to do something, to realize that aspiration. So, in doing this work, Marv and I synthesized 4 principles that we stand on. And when I don't know what to do, that's my foundation, and I want to share them with you. We call them Future Search principles, but they really apply to any meeting that you want to run if you would take on these principles. First one, getting the whole system in the room. If we really want people to understand and take responsibility for the system that they work or live in, they have got to experience it for themselves. It doesn't come from presentations or from papers. People have to be present to one another. And more, if we want to transform a system, a whole system, people have to interact with people in the environment that are key to their success. Because if you when we keep having the same conversations with the same people, we're only replicating the conditions that we're trying to get out from under. So when we talk about whole system, We say getting collectively, people with authority, with resources, with expertise, with information, and need, meaning those who are impacted by the outcomes. And if you can get that cast of characters together in one room, people will understand the system, the issues, at a deeper level. And when you understand the issues at a deeper level, you're able to act in ways that you didn't before. So that's the first principle. The second one, it has this funny wording, but it says, explore the whole elephant before acting on a part. And those who know me know this elephant story, and I'm sure you know it yourself. The blind man and the elephant? Yeah? Well, I'm going to tell it because it goes like this. 6 blind men, they want to know what an elephant is like. They go out, they fall against an elephant. The man who grabs the leg says, aha, an elephant is like a tree. And the one who's at the trunk says, you're wrong, an elephant is like a snake. The one at the tail says, you're both wrong, an elephant's like a rope. At the tusk, the man's arguing an elephant's like a spear. The man who has the ear that's waving says it's like a fan. The man who falls against the side of the elephant says it's like a wall. And in the poem, it says they argue loud and strong because while each was in the right, they were all in the wrong. And I see some heads nodding. This is about our default position, which is believing that the nature of the whole system is really just a larger version of our part. And if we want to understand a system in its complexity and have a reality-based understanding, not just carry assumptions, but a real understanding, we have to learn together about what the parts of the elephant are. We have to learn together what the system is in order to then take informed action. The next principle is focus on the future and common ground, and we're about, as I think most of you are also, what is it you want and who wants to work together, which is different from what's gone wrong and who's to blame. And we do not push any of the problems or the conflicts under the rug. So that's part of reality. But you don't have to, we don't have to resolve the differences or negotiate the differences or solve the conflicts in order for the meeting to be a success. They don't have to be agenda items. And then the last principle is people taking responsibility for the work they do when they're together, for the work, for the decisions that they make about what they want to do as a result, and the action they take. So these are the principles on which I stand. I mean, this is how I've discovered how to have leverage in this chaotic world. Because one person cannot change a system. I don't know anyone who can, and Sharad Sapra knew that, and Rav Carrier knew that, and many others know that. They're too big, they're too diverse, their power is too widely distributed. But as leaders, or in our relationship with leaders, we can help people improve the systems that they are a part of. And I really believe there's no more compelling reason than now to embrace what Marv Weisbord calls everybody improving whole systems. Because we're all living on this planet, we're all in the same boat, and the economic system, the technical system, the environmental system, the political system, it's all one system. And everything that each one of us does affects the other. And what we could do is in every meeting that we are a part of, we can do something that we never did before and help people do something that they've never done before, because collectively we know everything. And together we can make things work. And so when I have the right people in the room and don't know what to do, I know that someone in the room does. But I want to share something. I and those who know me know this, I do go into despair, and even deep despair, over how destabilized this world is right now. But what brings me hope personally is that I know that under these conditions, people have found their way out of intractable problems like hunger and child abuse and housing, or created breakthroughs in communities that have been torn apart by racism or sectarianism or economic inequality. I'm really grateful when people can find their way out of dark places. And it allows me to have hope that there are possibilities that are good possibilities and nurturing possibilities. Then there's one other piece, and that is my responsibility in all of this. And my responsibility is to have control here. The best control, we say, is self-control. So that when I can control the structures or the conditions under which people can meet and learn together and act, as in the 4 principles, when I can control that, I can let go of the control that actually I don't have in the first place, which is people, people's behavior, their personality, their motivation. And when I give up controlling people and hang in controlling structure, you discover you have more control than you ever thought you had before. So, with the chaos of the world, when it overwhelms me, I know that I have a meeting that I can go to where we can make a difference. This is bizarre. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, actually. I'm totally not sorry. Because this is changing the world one meeting at a time by doing exactly what I can do. Because I can't do any more, but I can do that. And that's what's important to me. Thank you very much.